Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, May 6th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. Well, today, as always, we have a number of things to celebrate. First off, we start with Our Lady of Miracles in the Church of Our Lady of Peace, Rome, 1483. So the Abbot Orsini recalls this event in his book. He says, "It is related that in the year 1483, a man who had lost his money by gaming, after blaspheming at this picture, gave it 4 stabs with a dagger, and that it bled so copiously that the miracle was at once divulged all over the city. The picture is still preserved in the Church of Our Lady of Peace, where it is to be seen at the high altar framed in marble." Right? Well, the present-day Church of Our Lady of Peace, or Santa Maria della Pace, in Rome, is still standing. It was built by Pope Sixtus IV after the city of Rome had been under siege by the Duke of Calabria. The Pope made a vow that he would build a new church in Rome in honor of Our Lady if peace could somehow be reestablished between his papal states and the cities of Florence, Milan, and Naples. Well, sure enough, peace was established, and construction actually started in 1482 as an act of thanksgiving to Our Lady, but it wasn't completed until the time of Pope Innocent VIII. Now, according to various traditions, this particular site for the church was made because of an incident in which a drunken soldier had stabbed a statue of the Madonna in the breast, at which point the figure started bleeding as if it were alive. Now, there's also another story that says that perhaps a stone was thrown at the image of Our Lady of Miracles, the one that currently hangs over the high altar, and then it started bleeding, right? In any event, the church, in fact, is actually built on the foundations of an earlier church. But this image is the venerated painting of Our Lady of Miracles, has our Blessed Mother holding the Divine Child. And it's interesting because it's in a high altar above the church, which was designed specifically to display and enshrine this famous painting. Some people think that this is the same image that was venerated in the portico of St. Andrew's of the water carriers, which I don't know where that church is, but in any event, there's also a famous fresco in the church painted by Raphael. Likewise, in France, we celebrate Sainte Marie Majeure in Marseille, in France. So this was the first cathedral built in France after 2 centuries of religious upheaval, right? So it's the new major or large cathedral, which replaced the old major cathedral from the 1100s. The Prince President Louis Napoleon Bonaparte placed the first stone on September 26, 1852, but the massive church wasn't finished until the 1890s. Pope Leo XIII declared it a minor basilica on January 24th, 1896, and the church itself was consecrated on May 6th, 1897. Likewise, they celebrate Madonna di San Giovanni, Our Lady of St. John, in Sommarvia del Bosco in Cuneo, Italy. Right? So this shrine has a beautiful fresco that has Our Lady with the Child Jesus and St. John next to her. So in front of this image, a poor blind man suddenly regained his sight. Well, it's interesting, at the same time, the image seemed to change like the expressions on the faces. And this all took place in front of the people who realized it, and it took place on, you guessed it, May 6th, 1685. Now, they also celebrate in Italy La Madonna delle Grazie, that's a very common name, Our Lady of Graces, in Piove di Sacco, Padova, in Veneto, Italy. Right? Now, we're told that this took place, the shrine can be traced back to a miraculous event that took place, and actually different writers have recorded the event. So, what does this celebrate? Well, it recalls an image that's painted on, painting from about the 1500s, or the 500s. I'm trying to figure out the year here. 1500s it looks like. And so these 2 brothers, their parents had died, and they were dividing up all of their property. And actually, they were getting along just fine, strangely enough. But the problem is that they didn't want to part with this image. They had this beautiful image of Our Lady, and they both wanted it. So they decided, okay, we're going to have a duel over this image. But it's a very interesting, dueling over an image of Our Lady. That was what they wanted to fight over. But it says just a couple seconds before this duel was supposed to start, a 1-year-old child who was present in the scene at his in his mother's arms, cried out to everyone's great surprise. He said, "Stop, because this is what Our Lady commands you, and take this image to a little church that's nearby, right, where there are the brothers of Saint Francis, because this is the intention of Our Lady, that neither of you should possess this image, but that it should be placed in that place where it can be perpetually adored." Well, obviously, everyone was stunned that this child, who was 1 year old, could speak, so the brothers did that immediately, right? And then many people started flooding to this place, and they noticed too that so many people had come to observe the image, and they'd given so many offerings, that the brothers also gave a piece of land, and they were able to build not only a convent for the friars minor, but also a little church dedicated to Our Lady. So why do they celebrate May 6th? Well, this is what they call the Festa del Voto, like the celebration of the promise or the vow. So this has continued since 1631, right? And what happened in 1631? Well, there was the epidemic, the plague was passing through, and it hit with a particular force the town Veneto and Lombardia, those two regions. But it seems that this little area was at least partially spared. So that is why the people were very grateful to Our Lady's intercession. Likewise, during the Second World War, the people of this town trusted themselves to their Mary's kindness to save their dear ones at the front. And precisely for this reason, to fulfill the vow that had been made May 16th, 1943, on June 1st, 1947, the Bishop Carlo Agostini solemnly crowned the image of Our Lady with Child. It's very nice, actually. They placed a precious diadem, which was made from the melted jewels and jewelry of the people who were, grateful for Mary's intercession. And we're told too that there were also two future popes spent some time praying in front of this image. We're told that between 1851 and 1853. During the autumn season, the young seminarian, Giuseppe Sarto, spent some time there as a guest of one of his classmates. That's Giuseppe Sarto, who would become St. Pius X. And we're told that he asked Our Lady of Graces for the gift of a holy priesthood that was full and rich of goodness. Okay, that's a difficult phrase to translate here. I have it in the Italian. Likewise, at the beginning of the 1900s, oh my gosh, the Italian structure here is a little difficult. So the Bishop of Bergamo, Giacomo Radini Tedeschi, was able to go to the shrine, and with his secretary, who was Angelo Roncalli, the good Pope John the 23rd. So that is what we are celebrating today in the Marian world on May 6th. For today's Marian meditation, taken from the book by Father Ildefonso Villar, we continue with meditation 61, Marian the Passion, and now we consider our second point, Our Lady. How great must have been Mary's suffering as she heard the terrible story told by her son. She shuddered with horror at the description of how every new torment which he would have to bear. Even the very thought was unbearable. How could she face it? Was it not better to die before it came to pass? Why did not God the Father bestow on her the favor granted to Saint Joseph, who was taken from this world before witnessing such scenes? But whilst these sentiments passed naturally through her mind, she felt at the same time that such was the will of God. The supernatural takes the upper hand, and Our Lady accepts the cup of sorrow and sacrifice that her Son is offering to her, not only with resignation, but even joyfully. How immense is the sorrow of that mother's heart! Yet how much more admirable is the fortitude and courage which leads her on the way of suffering in the footsteps of her Son. Meditate on this. In the face of this example, think of your own cowardice in front of suffering. Feel ashamed, ask pardon, implore grace to change, and pray that you may abound in generosity and share the fortitude of the Mother and of the Son. For today's reading from the Admirable Heart of Mary by St. John Eudes, we start chapter 6 entitled Heart of Mary, Empire of the Divine Will. After the most amiable heart of Jesus, there never was nor will be, in heaven or on earth, any heart where the adorable will of God reigns so perfectly and gloriously as in the admirable heart of the Blessed Virgin. In the first place, the glorious Virgin always esteemed and revered the divine will as her origin and principle, the source of her being and her life, to which she constantly referred her use of these gifts as to their first cause. Secondly, she considered and honored the divine will as her last end and as the center of her existence, knowing full well that she existed in the world only to accomplish and do the Creator's will in all things. To this end all her thoughts, words, and actions were directed, and in this amiable center her most pure heart exclusively sought and found its sovereign contentment and complete rest. Thirdly, Mary considered and respected the divine will as ruler and sovereign, whose every order was so dear and precious that she would have preferred 1,000 deaths to the slightest disobedience. Fourthly, Our Lady considered and loved God's holy will as her true paradise, where she found sublime delights, because not only did she desire everything that God ordained, but she willed her acceptance in the matter most pleasing to him. Hence, as God himself derives infinite pleasure from the operation of his decrees, so did our heavenly Virgin receive the greatest joy and happiness from her faithful fulfillment of the divine will.
Hello, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to our Marian podcast. In the spirit of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, we say to you that there is no greater delight than to spread the devotion of Our Lady. We hope you share these sentiments and encourage you greatly to share with a loved one. Know that you are always in our prayers, and we ask that you keep us in yours. God bless.